107.9 FM, Viewpoint Show with Dan Morris on a Thursday. TGIF Eve. Bradley Byrne is in the house, 272-9228, 1-800-289-9228. Bradley, let's go back to the Superintendent of Education. Joe Morton has decided to step down. They have an interim, and this interim is not interested in the job, right-hand guy to Joe Morton. Tell us, from being on the board previously, what is it like to select a superintendent? Who do you think they need to be looking for? Not necessarily a name, but what personality, character, credentials, resume should they have?
Well, first of all, let me say something very positive about Joe Morton. I've known Joe for 20 years. A man of tremendous integrity, really does care about education deeply. I know there's been some criticism of him in the last several days. I can tell you, from knowing him as well as I know him pretty well, none of that criticism is warranted at all. So,
the Joe Reed criticism,
yes,
or that was absolutely outrageous.
Anybody who knows Joe Morton knows that those things that Mr. Reed said about him are not true, and they're not true. But you know, when I was on the state school board, in the first year that I was on it, first year Stephanie Bell was on it locally, and there were several others that were new. We had to replace Wayne Teague, who had been state superintendent for 20 years. And it was the toughest decision that I had to make in my years on the board. There was an enormous amount of pressure to appoint this person or that person, and there were different groups that had different reasons for wanting to do it. I'll say this about our board: we remained independent in that process and had a split vote. It was a 5-4 vote to appoint Ed Richardson as the state superintendent, who at the time was the superintendent of Auburn City Schools. It was the most important decision that we made while I was on the board, and the most difficult.
Where was the split? Along party affiliation lines? The 5-4?
No, it was, you had sort of Republicans and Democrats split up on it. You had Governor James wanted, who was the governor at the time, wanted his chief of staff, Jimmy Baker, to be the superintendent. AEA also wanted Jimmy Baker to be the superintendent.
Ooh, that should scare you.
And he never really applied for the position. And we had this very, rigid, not rigid, but formalized process for how you apply for the position. And we got down to it, and there were 3 finalists. Joe Morton was one, Ed Richardson was one, the other was a lady from Arizona. And I was being told, even up until the bathroom break before we took the vote, that the fix was in so that it wouldn't be any one of those 3, and then they'd slide in Jimmy Baker. I'm not speaking bad about Jimmy Baker because I've known him a long time, but I didn't like the way that was being done. It just didn't feel right. Well, I think everybody was surprised when they took the first vote, which was on Ed Richardson. They had to have 5 votes, and they were assuming that there'd be 3 here and 2 here, and then they wouldn't have 5 votes. Well, Governor James called for the vote and started counting, and he got to me. I was at the very end of the table, and I was number 5, and I voted aye for Ed Richardson. And everybody in the room, including Dr. Hubbard, was just astonished. And
did he give you the Bob James look?
Well,
the cow with the gate look?
Well, Governor James, to his credit, smiled and said, Ed Richardson from Auburn is the new superintendent, was very gracious about it. Dr. Hubbard wasn't very happy. He got up and left. And all these people had been telling me, even at the restroom break before we took the vote, that it was going to be anybody but those 3. You could see them in the back of the room with their eyes poked out, because that had never happened before. And this board's going to have a very difficult decision to make. I would give them 2 pieces of advice. Number 1, don't drag this out. We made that mistake. And the longer you drag it out, the more these pressures from outside groups build, and I don't think that's healthy. So I know that they've got an interim after August the 1st, and I know Larry Craven, he's a great guy, and he'll do a good job as an interim, but I hope they won't drag it out. Secondly, they need to look for somebody who not only has Joe's qualities of integrity and great concern and care about education, but somebody's going to say, all right, Alabama's made some gains in the last several years, but we've got to take it to another level. If you look at Florida, one of our neighboring states, Florida is so far ahead of us. Florida went from being the 37th state in the nation in educational attainment to the 6th in 10 years. Absolutely. And Florida is a very diverse state. Less than half of their students are white. Over half of their students are on free and reduced lunch. This is not some rich state. I mean, they've got a very diverse population. A lot of people that aren't well-to-do. If Florida can make those kind of gains, Alabama ought to be able to do so as well. but we got to think way outside of the box we're in right now to get there. And so we're going to have to find somebody who's willing to get outside the box.
Do you think looking outside of Alabama is a good thing? Should they look at Alabama first? Is it the man from afar and bring someone in that doesn't have all the tethers on them and such? Or do you think we should look at somebody in Alabama that knows Alabama?
When we did all of the two-year college president searches when I was chancellor, and we replaced about half the presidents, so we did a bunch of searches, we had a completely open process. And we had people outside the state and inside the state apply. Most of the people we picked were from outside the state. That wasn't planned. That's just the way it worked. But if you have a truly open process, you'll get the best people from inside your state and around the country. And that gives the board the maximum opportunity to find the right man or the right woman to lead this state. And that person's out there. I don't have a candidate. I don't know who that person is, but that person's out there, and we'll hope that they will figure out who that is.
Would someone like a Dr. Jack Hawkins, Troy University, do you think that type of personality and resume would be someone good for that slot?
Gosh, if we could get Jack Hawkins to do it, he'd be excellent.
Everyone I have mentioned that to has said that. And he's retired, lives out at the Waters now. Actually, my choice would be Governor Chris Christie.
Actually, my choice would be former Governor of Florida, Jeb Bush. He did what I just said in Florida, but they're out there. Somebody's out there.
And let me tell you, the whole Florida, the Florida crucible of education is one we really, it's interesting you brought that up, because that's one where they really got it right. They got out of the way. They let some local folks make some decisions and did charter schools and all sorts of stuff, and their numbers changed almost within overnight, practically. It was absolutely amazing. News Talk 107.9 FM. Bradley Byrne is in the house, 272-9228. Going to our top of the hour break. I'll be back right after this.